What's up, chess player? The game I'm about to show you is one of the most incredible ones in the entire chess history. Moreover, after watching this video, you're never gonna look at chess the same way. So, fasten your seatbelts and let's get started. This game has been played by the one and only Akiba Rubinstein. He played as white here, and the game started with d4, d5. He played against Karl Schlechter and knight f3, knight f6. By the way, Karl Schlechter could easily be the second world chess champion because he technically won his match against Emanuel Lasker, but back at the time, the rules was that you need to outplay the world champion by a margin of 2 points, and that feels now incredible, but that was the rules, and he was 1 point ahead before the last round, and well, he knew that he needed to win, and he was playing for a win and lost that game. That is why the final score is even, but according to today's rules, I would definitely call him as a world champion. Anyway, Rubinstein played here as white. The game started with the Starish defense, takes, knight takes, and e4. White is getting the control of the center. But of course, black can still counterplay. That is a very famous variation, even today, pretty playable, bishop b4 check. The point is that black is trying to get some initiative here as a compensation for this very strong and solid white pawn center. But queen a5 is considered to be a mistake nowadays. Of course, back in the time, nobody knew that. So rook to b1, a very smart move, developing another piece, and that is basically leading towards the endgame here. But the endgame is much better for white, and you're gonna learn those principles that you can apply in your own games, so you can improve your endgame as well as middle game technique a lot here. So castles, and here comes one of the most important moves in the entire chess history, because back in the time, nobody understood those nuances, those very important principles that allow us today to play chess relatively strong. The key move here is bishop to b5. Why would you say it's so important? Well, because you are not allowing your opponent to develop at all. I mean, if you go to c6, then you're gonna get a very weak pawn there on c6. If you go to d7 with one of the pieces, you're gonna lose the b7 pawn. And in general, I mean, if you go knight d7, I'm not even obliged to take it. I can just continue the development, bring another rook, and it's so difficult for black to get anything out of it. And if black plays a6, which happened in the game, then the bishop just goes back, but now you can't really continue, and you have another weakness on the dark squares, and that is why this move is so powerful, so incredible, taking into account the fact that it has been played in 1912. So the game continued with rook to d8, rook to c1. Now all of the pieces are developed, and look at those rooks. I like it so much. The engine says it was better to play rook b6, but I mean, it's always great to develop all of your pieces, to just bring all of your players into the football pitch so that you can start your incredible attack. So let's see how Rubinstein succeeded with it. b5 has been played here. That is why rook b6 was probably slightly better, to just stop this idea. But still, all of your pieces are so passive, they're not taking part at all. Rook to c7, now creating yet another problem, because the rook on the 7th rank is such a powerful piece here. So knight to d7 has been played, king to e3, and how can you continue? The bishop can't be developed, the rook can't be developed, so knight to f6 has been played, but now knight comes to e5 with yet another threat here. I mean, that is an example of a perfect chess that you should always try to implement in your own games, that we should all try to implement in our games. Of course, nowadays, it's not always possible that our opponent is playing in such a passive way without any counterplay, because today we know without a counterplay you can never survive. Your opponent will always come after you and kill you. Back at the time, it wasn't that understandable. So bishop d7, g4. Now, white is just expanding on the king side, just pushing forward those pawns and creating a lot of threats for black, and black can't do anything at all. h6 has been played, but now f4, and once again going forward, the g5 square is g5 threat is always in the air, and that has been played immediately. Takes, knight to h7 and h4. I mean, look at those black pieces, how miserable they should feel themselves. So rook to c8 has been played, rook to c1. One rook trade doesn't change anything, but always when you have this advantage, this type of advantage, when you don't have any material one, but you have space advantage, you have pieces activity advantage, should be very careful with pieces exchange, because with every exchange it's getting simpler for your opponents to get rid of all of the threats, to get rid of those space problems and so on. But in this case, this one rook trade doesn't really solve black's problem, because this rook is still incredibly strong, and yeah, how could you deal with that? Rook to d8 has been played, rook to a7. Now you have another weakness, but you just can't stay there the whole game on a8 and wait for your opponents to come after you. That just doesn't work that way. And so black is trying at least to create some threats, at least trying to attack somehow, and that is what you should do as well if you are finding yourself in a bad situation, because otherwise, believe me, you're gonna lose all of your games. Of course, one day your opponent might blunder and you're gonna come to me and say, what were you talking to me? That's totally bullshit, because that is how I play. It's totally passive and I still won the game. Yes, that might be true, but in the long run, this strategy is just a horrible one. Just believe me, never do that. Always try to seek for some activity. Takes. Now knight goes to g4. Notice how powerful this rook is, just cutting the king, and of course now this knight is able to create some threats for black. So bishop h5 has been played, knight h6 check, king goes to h8, and bishop e2. And that is not a trade offer, that's rather an offer to lose an exchange, because after bishop e2 there is knight f7 fork and you lose an exchange. So instead, bishop e8 back has been played. Now rook takes a6. Nobody is stopping white from just taking this pawn. King to g7 has been played. Knight g4 back, f5 and check. Knight goes back to e5. Just look at this knight. Still, even though we don't have a lot of pieces on the board, but you could see the knight is dominating this bishop here. That is such an incredible situation. And this knight is also horribly passive. And now, after pawn takes on e4, there is a brilliant move coming. Please try to pause the video for a second and find the best move for white here. Okay, I hope you took your time and you found it, because that is truly amazing here. Bishop takes b5 for the second time in the same game. The same bishop goes to the same square, and it's once again the great move, the best move in the position. This time, chess.com for some reason thinks it's a brilliant move. I would rather call the brilliant one the first one, but nevertheless, both of them are just crushing the opponent, and there is no way to deal with it. Once again, you can't take the bishop because of knight f7 and you win the exchange. Knight f6 has been played, but now takes. You have to take with the rook, king to f4, and now the king is participating in the attack. Remember that you can always use your king to attack your opponent. Unless, of course, you're afraid to get mated, but when there are not that many pieces left in the game, there is no problem with that. So after king g6, white won the game here, because there is no way to stop rook g7, knight f7, and yeah, this pawn can't really run. It's too far away from the promotion square. I hope you learned a lot out of this game. I hope it was such a spectacular one as it was for me. And in this video, you can deepen your chess understanding even more, learning from the best of the best.